Meltdown and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the millennial today that is joining us is, of course, Christopher Hopkins, our producer, who is fresh back from his honeymoon. Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks.
Where'd you go?
Dominican Republic.
The Dominican Republic. And where'd you stay?
It was called Finest Resorts in Punta Cana.
Was it nice?
Oh, my gosh. It was amazing.
Water beautiful and all that stuff. Food decent.
Yeah. Crystal
accommodations. Clear. You said earlier that you had a pool that was just for your particular unit, right?
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, well, welcome back, everybody, and welcome back, Christopher. Newly married and newly honeymooned in the Dominican Republic. This podcast, ladies and gentlemen, is called Mainstream Meltdown, and we have a truly dumbest bill in America. Look, folks, the mainstream media is completely losing its mind for a variety of reasons. But one of the most important reasons they're losing their mind is because there's actually a place where free speech can occur, and that would be Twitter, right? And then you have an announcement by Tucker Carlson that he is likely to put his content, his new content that is, on Twitter, a free speech platform. Because obviously his departure from Fox News, I have no doubt, was due in part, certainly in part, from the fact that he couldn't be controlled by the producers at Fox and by Lachlan Murdoch. And since they couldn't control him because he was engaging in free speech, and obviously that includes opinions as well as facts, they decided, look, you got to go. So Tucker Carlson has decided that he wants to move his entire platform to Twitter. And NBC reported on this. NBC, the real fake news media. And they basically are saying, well, who's going to police Tucker now? I mean, it was the Fox producers that were policing what he could say and not say. And then, of course, maybe Lachlan Murdoch, who's the head of, Fox News division. But at Twitter, since it's a free speech platform, who's going to stop him from saying things that we don't like? Folks, you will not believe this, okay? You will not believe the two clips you're about to hear from NBC News. It's almost hard to believe that anyone who has a remote idea of the United States Constitution and the First Amendment would even be dumb enough in the media to say, we got to be careful. We can't say, certain things. Well, listen for yourself. Here's clip number one. Here it is.
Okay, well, listen, Twitter was already under fire from misinformation, disinformation, all-out lies, anti-Semitism, racism before Elon Musk took over, and now it's gotten kind of crazy, right? Seemingly unmoored, if you will. Will anybody be able to police what Carlson says, or is this the point? It's just a free-for-all.
I think this is the point. It is a free-for-all. It's what Elon Musk wants to provide. This move by Tucker may cement the idea of Twitter as a right-wing website.
So that, by the way, is the eunuch, of course, of MSNBC, but he was talking there on NBC. And he is saying that Twitter is now, a right-wing place where all of the isms occur, racism, sexism, homophobia, all that stuff. I mean, it's such nonsense. So why are they doing this in the media? Well, I'm sure part of it is the profit motive, right? In the mainstream media, they're really intimidated by Twitter because it is a cutting-edge platform, and NBC and MSNBC are part of the dying media, of course, on cable and so forth. So that's one of the reasons, the profit motive. But the other motive, too, is the fact that NBC is state-run media, without question. So you will not believe this second section, okay? Because they're saying that someone needs to police what Tucker Carlson says on Twitter when he starts actually his new show on Twitter. We have that second clip, and here it is.
Look, who knows? I think that's an example of a broader question for Twitter, which is, if you get invited to something where there are no rules, where there is total freedom for everybody, do you actually want to go to that party? or are you going to decide to stay home? And that's a question for Twitter users. Some Twitter users might love the idea that there's going to be absolutely no moderation and no rules at all. Others might not want to be anywhere near that. Am I crazy, Matt?
No, you're right. And what happens to the advertising? I mean, if there's no moderation or little moderation, do the advertisers stay away? What does that do to the business prospects for Twitter itself?
I think that's very much...
So there's mainstream media melting down in real time. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, he's saying these things that are, this free speech stuff, it really shouldn't be occurring on Twitter. And what about the advertisers? Yes, are they really going to be there? So, of course, this is about business with MSNBC and NBC, of course, about the advertisers, who is paying the bills. And what they're really terrified of is that Twitter is no holds barred, right? Anything goes. You can say what you want. You can, of course, have an opinion on Twitter, including opinions that are not popular and opinions that are popular. Everything is allowed. And I think what the mainstream media really thought was that Tucker Carlson was going to maybe just sign up with another network and just continue what he was doing before at Fox, except with a new network. And what they don't realize is network television and cable news is a dying industry, okay? It is dying. And we see that in the numbers of all of these mainstream media plays, such as ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and Fox, okay? All of their viewership over time has indeed been declining relative to the growing portion of media, which is, of course, media that you get from YouTube or from Rumble or from Twitter and so forth. And let's face it, never bet against Elon Musk, because Elon Musk is always going to, in my opinion, figure it out long before everybody else. And so I'm assuming Tucker is going to be on Twitter Spaces, where it's live broadcast, and that, of course, you can watch it as many times as you want in its entirety. And I'm assuming that there's going to be, there will be folks who endorse him with products and so forth. Not entirely sure how that works, to be frank with you, with respect to, well, will you watch the show and will it be interrupted by advertisements? Or will it be Tucker Carlson on Twitter, sponsored by so-and-so? I don't know. I'm not really sure. One thing's for certain. The mainstream media is melting down, and they are terrified. They are terrified of going out of business and becoming irrelevant. And I think that's kind of happening anyway. By the way, they could regain their relevance pretty quickly just by being honest, right? Just by being balanced, by allowing all different kinds of opinions to come into play and being respectful of those opinions. Speaking of which, Donald Trump completely and utterly dismantles CNN's fake news media, ladies and gentlemen. And there is a CNN town hall meltdown, a complete town hall meltdown, where Caitlin Collins of CNN, Caitlin spelled Kaitlan, gotta love that, right? Gee, thanks, Mom and Dad, for making me have to spell my name for everyone like 3 times so they can figure out how to spell it, rather than just spelling it in a regular, normal way, right? Caitlin, Kaitlan. Caitlin Collins of CNN, she is the moderator of this town hall, and Donald Trump is the guest. So you have a bunch of Republicans in the audience at CNN. You have Donald Trump with Caitlin Collins on the stage. And so she's asking Donald Trump a bunch of different questions, except that she keeps interrupting his answers and arguing with him. And I have to ask you this question, ladies and gentlemen, before you even listen to this clip. Do you believe for 1 minute that CNN would ever speak to a Democrat president the way they're speaking to Donald Trump? I mean, think about that. And I'm certain the answer is no. But you decide for yourself, and this will bring back memories of Donald Trump during his 4 years in office about how out of control the media was. and how disrespectful they were of Donald Trump, and how there was zero balance with his presidency versus the current presidency, where we have a guy in office who he doesn't even know what's happening. He's not running things. Barack Obama is running things. And so here's Donald Trump and Caitlin Collins of CNN at the town hall, and listen to this exchange about the illegal immigration surge and Title 42 elimination that's currently happening. Listen to how she tries to rewrite history. You'll love this. Listen.
To get those documents back like
Joe
you
Biden
did. And so
took
that's the question.
1,850 boxes.
But that's the question that investigators have, I think, is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
you
the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to. You're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Can you answer why you held on to the documents?
I was negotiating, and we were talking to NARA, that's Washington, to bring whatever they want. They can have whatever they want. When we left Washington, we had the boxes lined up on the sidewalk outside for everybody. People are taking pictures of them. Everybody knew we were taking those boxes. And the GSA, the government service, the GSA was the one taking them. They brought them down to Mar-a-Lago. We were negotiating with NARA. All of a sudden, they raid our house. When Biden had his documents, he won't give back the 1,850 boxes. And you're going to find some real gems in there.
Look, this was about the classified documents. There's another clip also about Title 42 and illegal immigration. We only wanted to play this one for you about the classified documents because of the way Donald Trump, classic Trump, right, goes right after Caitlin Collins and calls her nasty. But I have to give some context to that because Caitlin Collins throughout this town hall was incredibly disrespectful to Donald Trump. She addressed him like he was some idiot just walking down the street. And she would never have done this with Joe Biden or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. Of course not. Of course not. But look, there is some progress that has occurred here, namely that CNN has had a town hall meeting with Donald Trump, which in and of itself is hard to believe, except that CNN needs what? They need viewers. They don't have any. The only way they can get viewers is if they get Republican viewers or if they get Donald Trump on there and they get hateful Democrats to watch as well. Because CNN is a dying brand. I mean, I'm shocked that it's still in business. Absolutely shocked. And that is why they brought Donald Trump on. Look, the only way CNN actually is an ongoing concern moving forward is if Donald Trump actually wins the nomination, Republican nomination for president, and runs, in which case CNN will have lots of viewers because you'll hear Caitlin Collins' hateful words. And look, this does not help. And to be fair, Donald Trump obviously isn't the choir boy either. So, I mean, maybe they belong on the same stage, but I do think it is high time for the media's comeuppance where you have free platforms like Twitter. And then you have a mainstream melting down because you have Tucker Carlson going to Twitter. And then you have CNN going, oh my gosh, we're losing viewers like crazy. We have to figure out a way to be relevant. Hey, let's bring Donald Trump back and have a town hall and accuse him of everything, accuse him of ruining the country, including, by the way, she spent an entire section in this town hall saying that Donald Trump was responsible for the current immigration crisis. That Donald Trump was responsible. The guy that wanted to build a wall and was stopped by the courts and the Democrats from building the wall. I mean, these individuals know that this is the soft underbelly of the Democrat Party, that being illegal immigration and the Democrats' desire to have no borders. And as such, she decided, well, we have to be able to ruin Donald Trump's reputation as someone who believes that America has borders. And the only way we can do that is by saying that he was ineffective as president in keeping illegal immigration at bay. And therefore, there's no difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, since it's likely to be a rematch of those two, which is the real goal of CNN, of course. They literally get their talking points from Barack Obama and from Joe Biden's team. And of course, Barack Obama's team, because he's the one that's literally running everything right now and has been for quite some time, at least at the White House. And so next up, podcast listeners, we have $50 trillion that are likely to be spent to reduce carbon emissions. Yeah, you heard that right. So in the Daily Caller, we have my favorite United States Senator, John Kennedy, Republican of Louisiana, who is left speechless this past week when the Deputy Secretary of Energy comes before him and talks about how the United States needs to spend $50 trillion in order to reduce global temperatures. So think about that. So $50 trillion, more wind farms, more solar farms, shutting down all fossil fuels, forcing people to eat bugs and not meat because, of course, cows have flatulence and pigs have flatulence. So therefore you have to eat just bugs, So changing the way you eat, changing the way you live, putting us back, 200 years ago, because that's really what they want us to do. And so no one can really ask questions better in the United States Senate in a more cogent and direct way than United States Senator of Louisiana, John Kennedy. So he has before him the Energy Deputy Secretary, David Turk, who basically is reading from talking points, right? We have to stop climate change now, and we must be a leader to stop climate change, and we must spend whatever it takes to stop climate change. And so John Kennedy's like, yeah, whatever. So I have a few questions for you about all of this money that you want to spend. And John Kennedy is always able to dummy down these questions in a way that they are understandable. So I want you to really listen to this tweet. It was a tweet, but it's actually a clip because it's really, really good. And I wish more Republicans were able to break down conversations with the left in a way that was more understandable about how phony they are and how intentions matter with the left, but not results. They don't really care about the results because they don't really know what the results are going to be, and they don't really care about the results. All they care about is their ideological religion of climate change. So we have this clip, ladies and gentlemen, of this exchange, and here it is.
Percent of global emissions.
Yeah, but if
right
you could
now.
answer my question, if we spend $50 trillion to become carbon neutral in the United States of America by 2050, you're the Deputy Secretary of Energy. Give me your estimate of how much that is going to reduce world temperatures.
So first of all, it's a net cost. It's what benefits we're having from getting our act together and reducing all of those climate benefits. We're seeing.
Let me ask again. Maybe I'm not being
country.
clear. If we spent $50 trillion to become carbon neutral by 2050 in the United States of America, how much is that going to reduce world temperatures?
This is a global problem. So we need to reduce our emissions, and we need to do everything we can.
How much, if we do our
other
part, is it going to reduce world temperatures?
We're 13% of global emissions.
You don't know,
now.
do you? You don't know, do you?
You can do the math. We need to.
You don't know, do you, Mr. Secretary?
So we're 13% of
If
global
you know,
emissions.
why won't you tell me?
If we went to zero, that would be 13%.
You don't know, do you? You just want us to spend $50 trillion, and you don't have the slightest idea whether it's going to reduce world temperatures. Now, I'm all for carbon neutrality, but you're the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Energy, and you're advocating we spend trillions of dollars to seek carbon neutrality, and you can't, and this isn't your money or my money, it's taxpayer money, and you can't tell me how much it's going to lower world temperatures? Or you won't tell me? You know, but you won't?
In my heart of hearts, there is no way the world gets its act together on climate change unless the U.S. leads.
Tell me how much it's going to
needs to
reduce.
lead.
You can't tell me. Either that or you won't.
So is that awesome or what? This is the Deputy Secretary of Energy of the United States of America, whose job it is to provide actual facts, actual data about policy and whether policy is effective or will be effective once implemented. Instead, this deputy secretary, Mr. Turk, of the United States Department of Energy, decided to say, well, if we spend $50 trillion between now and 2050, then that will reduce world global warming temperatures. And yet, the deputy secretary couldn't say for sure if it would work or wouldn't work or by how much. So, well, then, if you can't measure success, which is what I have said from the very beginning, ladies and gentlemen, about climate change ideology and climate change religion, the whole purpose of it is to make it so that it can't be measured ever. Success can never be measured because the whole purpose of climate change as a religion is to have an ideological and totalitarian takeover of the United States of America. Because who in their right mind would ever spend $50 trillion, which would clearly bankrupt us, if there wasn't some sort of measurable result? And yet this deputy secretary has no measurable result to offer other than to say, well, we need to be a leader. Yeah, whatever. Okay. We need to be a leader to reduce carbon emissions and or have carbon neutrality. To what end? Oh, well, because it's going to reduce global warming. By how much? Oh, well, I'm not really sure. It's not my job to determine. Actually, it is your job. You're the Deputy Secretary of Energy. And as you all know, there's no better way to bankrupt a country than to spend money again and again and again on the same thing and never have a measure, a rule, a way of determining whether what you have done is being successful and or will be successful. And that is exactly why the Democrats love this climate change religion, because they have completely indoctrinated children in public schools, K to 12, that they're going to die unless we spend this kind of money. But then they can't actually determine how they're going to die, what's going to cause their death, or the fact that if we don't spend the money on this particular area, that maybe we might just be okay. Or maybe there's a better way of spending the money. Maybe we spend the money on things that actually we can measure. So, for example, I don't know, like nuclear power, as we've talked about many times on this podcast. Wow, what about that? Yeah, well, nuclear power is carbon neutral, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. It produces no carbon. But the Democrats don't want it because that could be measured. They don't want things that can be measured. And John Kennedy, the Republican United States Senator from Louisiana, is brilliant because he's the one guy that can actually make sense of this religion and bring it down to earth when he starts asking very, very simple, dumbed down questions like, tell me, what is the measurable result that we will have after spending all this money? And then you have an ideologue who, by the way, he's smirking, by the way, David Turk, the deputy secretary, the entire time, because he knows everything he's saying is full BS. He's just smirking. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, you caught me there. I mean, these people are literally ruining our country because they have brainwashed one sector of our society to think they're going to die and that you don't need to measure anything. And then the other sector of society is the one that's paying for it and suffering from it. Case in point, remember when we told you about how certain states might want to ban natural gas? And I've heard this many times, ladies and gentlemen. People would say, oh, that's just not true. That's just Democrats basically, talking to their base about how they want to cancel natural gas. Well, guess what? New York State, first state in the United States to pass a statewide ban on new natural gas hookups. We warned you that this was coming. Yet I would hear Democrats say to me, including privately, by the way, we just say that about banning natural gas because we want to get our base all charged up. That way they'll vote for us in elections because, you know, they're religious ideologues on the left because we've trained them and educated them that way. But we're never going to really get rid of natural gas because it doesn't make any sense. Because we need natural gas in order to survive, to keep our houses warm, and to also create electricity and, I don't know, to cook, among other things. But New York has actually passed a statewide law, first in the country, to ban natural gas in buildings. So in New York State, Governor Kathy Hochul has signed this ban. And if you're going to build a new home or a new building, you can't connect to natural gas. It could be right there at your driveway, right in front of your brand new house, and you can't connect with it. You can't connect to it because you're not allowed to in New York State because the government is becoming totalitarian in New York State. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, many New Yorkers who have business in New York City or the greater New York City area are finding it possible through remote work to move across the state line to Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania, a state that has been very flat with population growth, you know, kind of losing population relative to other states at least. Other states are growing. Pennsylvania kind of like on a, you know, kind of flat line for many years. Pennsylvania, mark my words, because I see it firsthand. I don't live there, but I do some work up there and I see and I talk to people and they're like, yeah, you won't believe how many New Yorkers, and not necessarily from New York City, but just from all over the greater New York area who are moving to Pennsylvania because they can work remotely. And New York City is just, you know, 2.5 hour drive, 3 hour drive from certain parts of the western part or central part of Pennsylvania. So it's close enough to go there for your regular, you know, meetings from time to time. But also, at the same time, you don't have to deal with the New York taxes or the crazy New York getting rid of banning gas or the other crazy New York problems like crime. And so I actually predict that a lot of these people who are moving to Pennsylvania are the Republicans that are currently living in New York State. And I think they are going to flip Pennsylvania back to a Republican state, kind of like the way Ohio, you know, was always kind of like, it would go back and forth between Democrat and Republican. Ohio is a solidly Republican state. Florida would kind of go back and forth between Democrat. Florida is a solid, Republican state because so many Republicans moved there. And because so many Republicans moved and have stayed in Ohio. Well, that's what's going to happen in PA. So many Republicans from New York State are going to move to Pennsylvania. And that is a good thing, okay? It is a good thing. That's exactly the way our country is supposed to work because New York State has decided to ban natural gas hookups. Why? Because they can. Because they have the control. Because they're crazy. Because they've lost their minds, the Democrats. Because they are religious zealots as it comes to climate change. What kind of measurable change will getting rid of new natural gas hookups cause? They can't measure it. And Chris and I were just talking earlier, we're saying, by the way, the next bill to drop in New York State, give it 2, 3, 4 years, they're going to stop you when you want to renovate your house, when you already have a natural gas hookup, from being able to continue using natural gas. I can guarantee you that's going to happen. Guarantee. And they're going to continue to tighten the noose, to which point you're going to have more larger and larger exoduses from the state of New York, and they're going to be going wherever they can go, where they can feel free. Pennsylvania being one of those states. And I can only hope and pray that Pennsylvania flips back to a Republican state because it is desperately needed in national elections for Republicans to be able to win the White House, basically. So next up, podcast listeners, you're going to love this. Fighting trans indoctrinations. And boy, this is actually really kind of funny. We have a couple of clips in this segment, fighting trans indoctrination. The second one is really funny because it's a councilman that decided to identify as, as trans. But the first one is a seventh grader, right? Think about this. A seventh grader who goes to the school board and speaks to them about some experiences that he has had in his school and in his classroom. He was sent home for wearing a t-shirt that says there are only two genders. He was sent home for that. But think about that. Now, you can be a seventh grader, I would imagine, in his school because he actually acknowledges this is the case. And you can wear the pride flag and God knows what else, but you can't wear a shirt that says there are only two genders because we're anti-science. So a middle school student who says he was sent home for wearing a t-shirt that said there are only two genders bravely and brilliantly and bluntly addressed the matter at a Middleborough Public Schools Committee meeting. I never thought that the shirt I wore to school would lead me to speak with you today, the 12-year-old Liam Morrison said. And he goes on to talk about his experiences in the school. And this kid is so articulate. Look, this particular segment, this clip is a couple of minutes long. It is worth listening to because I feel like the kids now are the ones who are smarter than the idiots running these school boards and running the schools. And we need to fight back on this trans indoctrination. And here's a seventh grader who's doing just that. We had that clip, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, it's a couple minutes long. It is worth every minute of listening to it. Here is the clip.
My name is Liam Morrison. I live at 519 Wareham Street. I'm in the 7th, 10th grade at Nichols Middle School. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I never thought that the shirt I wore to school on March 21st would lead me to speak with you today. On that Tuesday morning, I was taken out of gym class to sit down with two adults for what turned out to be a very uncomfortable talk. I was told that people were complaining about the words on my shirt, that my shirt was making some students feel unsafe. Yes, words on a shirt made people feel unsafe. They told me that I wasn't in trouble, but it sure felt like I was. I was told that I would need to remove my shirt before I could return to class. When I nicely told them that I didn't want to do that, they called my father. Thankfully, my dad supported my decisions and came to pick me up. What did my shirt say? 5 simple words. There are only two genders. Nothing harmful, nothing threatening, just a statement I believe to be a fact. I have been told that my shirt was targeting a protected class. Who is this protected class? Are their feelings more important than my rights? I don't complain when I see pride flags and diversity posters hung throughout the school. Do you know why? Because others have a right to their beliefs just as I do. Not one person, staff, or student told me that they were bothered by what I was wearing. Actually, just the opposite. Several kids told me that they supported my actions and that they wanted one too. I was told that the shirt was a disruption to learning. No one got up and stormed out of class. No one burst into tears. I'm sure I would have noticed if they had. I experience disruptions to my learning every day. Kids acting out in class are a disruption, yet nothing is done. Why do the rules apply to one, yet not another? I feel like these adults were telling me that it wasn't okay for me to have an opposing view. Their arguments were weak, in my opinion. I didn't go to school that day to hurt feelings or cause trouble. I have learned a lot from this experience. I learned that a lot of other students share my view. I learned that adults don't always do the right thing or make the right decisions. I know that I have a right to wear a shirt with those 5 words. Even at 12 years old, I have my own political opinions, and I have a right to express those opinions. Even at school, this right is called the First Amendment to the Constitution. My hope in being here tonight is to bring the school committee's attention to this issue. I hope that you will speak up for the rest of us so we can express ourselves without being pulled out of class. Next time, it may not only be me. There might be more students that decide to speak out. Thank you for your time and good night.
How do you like that from that 7th grader? I mean, that's amazing. I mean, here's a 7th grader who has more common sense than the teachers and the administrators and the school committee, which there is the school board. And he's basically saying, look, I have the right to say these things. But then there's this broader issue, too. And that broader issue is, for some reason, the Democrat Party and many school boards across the country and many education establishments across the country, and certainly the left, have tried to focus middle schoolers in particular on all these different types of sexuality. And I'm not saying that it isn't important to teach sexuality in middle school, because obviously it is important, because the kids, obviously their bodies are changing and they need to learn about what's happening to them and why it's happening. But the difference is that you have school systems that are saying to kids, hey, you know, there's the pride flag, wear the pride flag, and there's this flag, and there's that flag. You have different genders. You can call yourself, you know, he, she, there, they, is, where, you know, whatever, right? You can be multiple persons at the same time, which, of course, all that is complete and utter BS. And we all know it. And here you have a seventh grader who's like, yeah, actually, there are only two genders. Sorry, only two genders. And I'm going to wear a shirt that says that because that guy over there has got a shirt that says something different. And I just think it's important for me to express my First Amendment rights. And he was removed from the school, sent home. First removed from the classroom, asked, why are you wearing that shirt? That's hateful. It's ridiculous. Okay? So this is how you fight back on trans indoctrination, by calling out the left about how stupid they are and how unscientific they are. Case in point, ladies and gentlemen, a county councilman triggers the woke liberal class and gets them to protest their own ideology. So get this. An Indiana Republican politician caused the leftists to lose their minds when he reintroduced himself in the town council as a woman of color and a lesbian because he is attracted to women. Earlier this month, Delaware County Council member Ryan Webb posted a photo of his Facebook account, showing him with a pistol in his waistband. The caption read, "Ready for an awesome day. Hope everyone has a great day." The awesome day he was referring to was him coming out as a black transgender female. And he's a white guy, by the way. After much consideration, I have decided to come out as, and finally feel comfortable announcing my true, authentic self. It is with great relief that I announce to everyone that I identify as a woman, and not just any woman, but as a woman of color as well. I guess this would make me gay lesbian as well, since I'm attracted to women, says the councilman. So Ryan Webb is a white councilman from the state of Indiana. Yes, the county is called Delaware County, but it's not in Delaware, it's Indiana. And he now identifies as a woman of color, ladies and gentlemen. So the really funny thing about this is how the news media in Indiana had to take this like somewhat seriously, because they're always taking all the other crap seriously. You know, well, yeah, you can have two genders. Oh, you can be the opposite gender. You know, you can call yourself he, she, her, he, whatever. And so the media is caught in this conundrum because of this councilman, which is just obviously such a great way to fight back. We have the clip, ladies and gentlemen. If you get, yeah, I had to laugh all the way through it. Here's the clip. Here it is.
A councilman is coming out as transgender and a woman of color. Delaware County Councilman Ryan Webb announced that he now identifies as an Indian American woman. Since that announcement, he's received some support, but a lot of backlash, many calling him childish, despicable, even calling for things like execution. In a statement Webb gave to ITMate, he says, quote, "It is unfortunate that I cannot simply be given the same space and respect to explore my identity that so many of those targeting me demand for themselves. It's possible I may change my mind down the road. The process of identity exploration is complex, and oftentimes at the end of our personal journey, we end right back where we started." Webb goes on to tell ITMate this is just his true, authentic self.
So, listen, you got to admit that's great. So Christopher Hopkins, our producer here. Chris, we have got to get this guy on. We're going to have him call in. Seriously, we have got to have him call in to our podcast.
True.
And talk to him about this, because even though this happened, a week and a half ago or so, it is hysterically funny. Ladies and gentlemen, the left showed up and asked him to resign. So the following council meeting, following when he obviously came out as Indian, black, gay, lesbian, whatever, this white councilman had hordes of leftists show up and say, you need to resign. That's just not right. You shouldn't be able to do that. It's like, well, I'm just really confused. Why is what I'm saying wrong? Because you've been saying this for, I don't know, a few years. So this is how we fight back on trans indoctrination and show everybody how incredibly stupid it is, okay? And it is stupid. Because if you're 18 years of age or older, you should be able to do whatever you want to do with respect to your body. You can dress how you want. You know, if you want to go have surgeries, so be it. So be it. That is up to you, okay? But stop asking the rest of us to buy in to the mental disorder, okay? Because it is a mental disorder. And stop asking us to call you something that you are not, and telling us that a man is a woman is a man. You know, it's just nonsense. So this fighting back thing is great. And the other part of fighting back, too, is this whole Anheuser-Busch thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, you all know about Anheuser-Busch. You all know about Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney, yada, 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 okay? But there's something new in this story. You know what it is? It's fighting back. Because Wall Street has downgraded Anheuser-Busch's stock because the sales are down by so much. And that's bad enough, okay? But when you're a publicly traded company and the analysts on Wall Street decide to downgrade your stock, it means now you have a hard time borrowing money at the cheapest possible rates. And you have many other issues operating your company because Wall Street is like, you know, this is a company in crisis. And as such, you know, we don't really recommend that you buy the stock right now because the company has a problem. And it's clearly a leadership problem because they made the dumbest possible mistake that you could, which is to insult the people that buy their product. Can you imagine how stupid that is? And so the American people have fought back with Anheuser-Busch by saying, fine, we're just not going to buy your beer. And you would think that that would, in and of itself, be a decision maker for Anheuser-Busch to completely turn the company around, but they're so stupid. They're such a bunch of woke idiots that they haven't been able to turn the company around fast enough because the damage is done and it's permanent. I'm certain of it. And now you have Wall Street jumping on the bandwagon. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we, the people, fight trans indoctrination by co-opting their stupidity and by not buying their stupid products. And lastly, by having seventh graders show up and say, you know what? A man is a man, a woman is a woman, boy is a boy, girl is a girl. They're two genders. Deal with it. Sorry. And if you're going to kick me out of school, well, then I'm just going to have to sue you because it's nonsense and it's anti-scientific. And next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer?
Of course.
Here it is.
Dum 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 dum.
And it is the dumbest bill in America, and it is voter ID for illegals. Not what you think it is. It's not voter ID for the voters. It's Minnesota Democrats passing a bill to give voter ID to illegals so that the illegals can vote. Can't make this up. So, ladies and gentlemen, Minnesota Democrats passed a law this week that would allow illegal immigrants to apply for and obtain driver's licenses without having to prove they are in the country legally. The driver's license for all legislation states that a person applying for a state ID or driver's license is not required to demonstrate U.S. citizenship or lawful presence in the United States. Republicans pointed out in the state of Minnesota in the legislature that the language of the text is so vague that it would allow illegal immigrants to use their driver's licenses as voter ID. Republicans sought to amend the bill to include not for flying, that is to say, you couldn't have or use this ID as an illegal for flying on airplanes, and you couldn't use this ID given to illegals by the state of Minnesota for voting. So the Republicans put these two amendments on the floor in Minnesota's legislature for a vote. and the Democrats voted both of those measures down. Quote, what in your bill prevents that terrorist from coming to Minnesota, getting a driver's license, and getting on an airline and committing a terrorist act, Minnesota Republican State Glenn Gruenhagen said. But Democrat State Senator Zainab Mohammed claimed giving illegals licenses will actually enhance public safety. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Can't make this up. Quote, the right thing to do is keeping the people who are on our roads safe. And that's what Minnesotans are asking for, Mohammed said. Everyone across the state wants people on our roads to have gotten the proper driver's education that they need to have a proof of license so that we can be safe and live our lives with dignity. The only problem is that Mr. Mohammed is Zainab Mohammed, which I think is a lady, by the way. Yeah, she's a lady. Is the fact that you decided to vote against protections for legal voters who are American citizens in Minnesota. And so your whole goal here is to have these illegals show up en masse in Minnesota and vote. So Mohammed also rejected Republicans' concerns about opening Minnesota up to potential terror threats, claiming documentation requirements didn't stop the January 6th Capitol riot, which she called a terrorist attack. So why does this matter, ladies and gentlemen? Well, it matters for all the obvious reasons, because the goal of Minnesota Democrats is to have illegals vote in state elections. But there's more to this story. And here is what it is. Under Barack Obama, he allowed tens of thousands of Ethiopians and other people, mostly Muslims, into the United States, and they settled in Minnesota. And the whole purpose of that was to cement the Democrat Party in Minnesota. And now that the Democrat Party is, because Minnesota was starting to trend right, and it was traditionally a Democrat state, to be fair, but it was trending right for sure, including in many elections they had. Statewide elections were very, very close and getting closer and closer. So Barack Obama wanted to cement this by bringing in lots of illegals, or lots of people. Some came in legally, some illegally, to be fair. And now many of those Muslims are Democrats, and they are elected officials in Minnesota. Now, but to be fair, there are Muslim Republicans too, okay? But the fact of the matter is, in Minnesota, the whole point was to flip elections. And now they're trying to cheat even further by saying, well, now we're going to permanently cement the Democrat Party in Minnesota by having all these people who are illegal coming to the United States, coming to Minnesota, and then giving them voter ID so they can vote. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the playbook of why we have unbridled illegal immigration in the United States, because the Democrat Party wants to flip this country once and for all so it is a one-party state and will forever become a totalitarian country, because that is their goal. That's what the left does everywhere they get into power. And that is the dumbest bill in America, voter ID for illegals. And that's it from Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, True Social, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.